Hi, this is Jack Downs with a quick video tutorial for the lower thirds project in JOU PRE240. So I have, as you should, read the instructions and downloaded two files. I have them both in Movie Studio, lower thirds and something called Zap Sound. We won't use Zap Sound for some time. That will be later at the end of the project. Also, if you look through the instructions, you'll see there are three phases. We're going to start with the Photoshop lower third. And you should have already watched a video mentioned in the instructions about what the lower thirds are generally, or it'll be shown in class. Lower thirds are really just information in the lower third of the screen. You have used some type of very rudimentary lower thirds already. Now it's time to dress them up a little bit, as I wish you would, as I want you to do for your use in your final project. This little exercise, one thing that's different about it is there's no title slide or credit roll necessary. You'll recognize this video and some of the clips in it. It's a piece of 1, 2, 3 people that we've used before, 3 former students. So I open up Photoshop and here we are. In Photoshop, the instructions say to go File, New. Here we are. You can name this something. I'm going to send my lower jack. Not that important. You'll just want to remember what the name is. And the width is very important that you get the width and height correct, and that they be in pixels. If your choice is inches, that is really going to screw things up. So make sure it's in pixels. And then we're going to change the width to 1920 and the height to 250. 1920 is the pixel width of our video screen. That's all fine. 72, that's fine. Color mode is fine. Here's something we do want to be transparent. Now, sometimes you might come in, it might be white or black. You want it to be transparent. By the way, if your menu looks different from this, slightly different versions of Photoshop have slightly different new menus. I've noticed some of them you had a hard time finding the transparent, and you had to scroll to go find it. But transparent is what you want. And that's about it here. Say OK. Photoshop is thinking. It'll take just a moment. And I have a new document. And it is, as you would expect from a lower third, a long, skinny thing. We need to set 2 colors now. This is going to be the foreground and the background color. From these color pickers down here. See these two? And these are going to be the 2 ends of our gradient. So I think you should take, well, you can take somewhat darkish colors that you seem interesting to you. I'm going to take a blue, and I'm going to then, that would be for the foreground, I'll say OK. And then I'll go to my background, and I'm going to take you take what colors you like. I'm going to take something greenish, maybe a little bit like that. So say OK. All right, now we need to go get our gradient tool. It's in the 12th tool down, underneath, maybe hiding, as your instructions say, maybe hiding underneath the paint bucket. Yes, the paint bucket. So there's the paint bucket, and I hold down, and the gradient tool is right there. Okay, so now I'm just going to start drawing the gradient. What do I mean? Well, I have the gradient tool activated. A little hard to see my cursor sometimes. And I just draw a line here, I will get a gradient. Or I draw a shorter line, I'll get a different kind of gradient. Or draw an up-down line, it'll be like that. Or a sideways line. Or you draw however you like. I'm going to make mine a kind of a, something like that. No, let's do the other way. Blue to, no, like that. You do what you like. And then when you're done, you're going to go ahead and save this. Excuse my rustling papers. You're going to save it as a PSD. So you'll save as into your folder. And I've got to go to find, it's on my drive, and you've got to go find yours. You would have made a project folder already. And that's not the right one. 240. Mine is lower thirds. Mine is the current one. I would put this in originals. And I have one already there. You can ignore that. You won't have one already there. My new one is lower jack. I'm going to save it there. And I'll get that. Don't worry about it. Say OK. We are now done with this program. You can go ahead and close it up. We could have saved it as other file formats. Our video program is happy to use any number of file formats. So we're going to go ahead and put this lower thirds into our media bin now. And I don't want originals. I want actually I do want originals. And there it is, lower jack. There it is, right there. Okay. You'll notice, by the way, that I have my video arranged so that I have a couple of empty tracks above it. On one of those tracks, I'm going to drag and drop this piece of video down here. It's coming in at a size of 10 seconds, which is longer than I need for a lower thirds. I'm going to move it back to 5 or so, something like that. What does it look like right now? That's not very helpful. It's sitting right there on top of our face. How are we going to move it? Well, we're going to move it using something called track motion. That's also going to mean this track couldn't be used for anything but this thing. So we will have to abandon this track afterwards. Track motion has a lot of uses. It's again, it comes out in some awkward place. I'm going to make it a little smaller. I'd like to be able to see the face at the same time. Watch out, your window can get pulled into other windows if you're not careful here. I'll put it right here like this. I want to be able to see her at the same time. Track motion, we're going to click on this middle portion and we're going to bring it straight down. We could drag it. It will make a lot more sense for us to not change, not to drag it, but to use our mouse button, for instance, or sorry, our arrows on the keyboard. So I'm going to select that center portion and just start bringing it down. I'm using my down arrow. That way I don't have the danger of changing the X and Y position. If I did, I could always go up here and put a number in and put that back to 0 on X. Here we go. I'm going to keep on going down. I would like to get this color bar down. It's not at the very bottom. The lower thirds, graphical lower thirds like these, there should be a little bit of video space below them. So it's like essentially the bottom of her lip in this case. Don't worry that it looks like it's obscuring her too much. We'll take care of that. Okay, so we have now put our color bar here. And the point is you can make any kind of color or illustration or anything else in Photoshop or other programs and then save it and then bring it in here. Okay, so now we better go get some text. So I'm going to go to my media generator. And I'm going to go get some titles and text. And I'm going to use the default. I want a transparent background. I'm going to drag and drop it right on top here. And I get this text that looks like that, my sample text. I could use, sometimes depending on what choices you have, the fonts might be different or so on. These fonts I think are a little different from what I show, and this menu might be a little different also. Alternatively, I prefer legacy text, this one, this sample text here, which I'm going to get rid of the other one, but either one could be used. Sometimes you don't have access to this legacy text. I just think the legacy text is a little bit easier. Move this scrubber back here so we can see everything at once. Remember, what we're seeing in the preview is depending on where our scrubber position is here, our cursor position. All right, I'm going to close this up to the same length, and I got to go do some editing of that. So click back in here. Oh, not to pan and crop, but to the generated media button. And here we go. I'm going to put in her name, which is Danielle Beckford. Get this from your instructions, and that's going to be way too big. So I'm going to bring it down to like what? I don't know. For now, I'll put to like 36. That's a little too small. Let's try 48. Might be a little better. And of course, I'm going to do some placement, but I'm not really done yet. But I'll do the placement to get it started, roughly around in there. Well, that might be a little big now. Go back to edit. I'm going to change that to, let's change that to 36. I make a second line. In the second line, I'd like to use all caps in this case. Likes cheese puffs. And likes cheese puffs, I'm going to make that about 18 point. Okay. And I don't want these all to be centered. I'm going to select them all. I'm going to make them flush left. And I have to get my position properly now. Placement again. Now what I'm looking for is I want to have about equal space above and below, roughly. And you may have to use your mouse to get it just where you want it. Takes a little bit of work, something like that. Maybe a little extra space below, and about the same amount of space to the left of it there. Okay, good. So I'm going to close this up. All right. Are we all set? Well, a couple more things, and then one important one. Yes, we would like to fade these guys in for about 1 second, which is about 30 frames, if you remember right. And both fade about 1 second, roughly. Okay, good. And I'd like this color to not be so obscuring of the frame. What can I do? See this little handle on the top of any video frame, actually? It's opacity. And I can see opacity when I click on it. I'm going to grab that and yank it down. I'm going to make that semi-transparent. So I can see this color, but see through and see her also. Or semi-opaque, if you like. Okay, so let's look at this, go through with it.
I had to eat one food per week. It would have to be between porridge and...
Okay, good. Next up, we're going to do a lower thirds. That was a Photoshop lower thirds, but we can do a lower thirds where we get the color from Sony Movie Studio itself. Here we go. We're going to move down the track a little bit. So we're going to go to the start of the second clip, roughly. So we're going to talk about this guy's name. So it's right around in here. So what are we going to do? We're going to go to Noise Textures, which is a lot of textured color in different structures and so on. I think you could use any of these. I'm going to use blood cells, but you can use anything you like. And the names are quite descriptive. That does look kind of like blood cells. Now there's a problem here. Why is it only over part of the screen? Remember I told you we can't use this track for anything else. We have to use this track. This track down here has that track motion applied, so we cannot use it for anything else now. We have to go up here, which is going to mean, close it up for now, we're going to need another track on top of this for our text, because we're going to similarly have text and have a color bar here. How do we do that? Select over two here, do right click, insert video track. We can add as many video tracks as we like. And again, we'll make this about 5 seconds or so, something like that. Whatever, that's fine. We are going to use this text again. So let's get the text made up. We'll use the text again and we'll just edit it. How can we do that? Well, we can select anything, any piece of clip or anything, and copy it, Control C. Put my cursor over here where I want it, do Control V. It will ask me this question: create a new copy or create a reference. We always want a new copy. And it's sticking up there. If it wasn't up here, if it was put it someplace else, I would put it up here. And this is not Danielle Beckford. Make it the same length. So we're going to have to edit this for the text. All right. But first, maybe we'll deal with the color. Okay. We're going to use the pan and crop tool to resize this, because it's not just moving a piece. It's resizing it, really. So that's a little different. So every clip has a pan and crop tool. This won't change the track, just this individual clip. However, it's important that we have some of these settings different than we had them back when we used them for actually making motion on a still image. I'm going to stop there for a moment, but we'll be right back. Okay, back again, brief interruption. So here we are with this panel. These settings have to be different than we had before. We want to change both of these source settings to say no. This is all in your instructions. Both of them say no. Maintain aspect ratio, no. Stretch to fill for the source, no. Likewise, these buttons over here that would do something similar to the output, we want to make sure they are unchecked. We do not want the lock aspect ratio checked. See, it's not checked because there's no little white area around it. I don't want this guy checked, hold size about center. And I would actually prefer to have this be up, down, move freely up, down. So what am I going to do now? I'm actually just going to grab this and yank it down. I can put it roughly where I want it. But don't I really know the height that it's supposed to be? Yes, I do. So why don't I just put that number in here, 250. hit Enter or Tab, takes effect. Now I can just use my up-down, not my up-down arrow, sorry. I can just use my, I can just slide this with my mouse and get it just to the same place I had the other one before, like that. And like that's good. Okay, good. And I'll close this up. Good. And I can reduce the opacity of it again like that. So it's kind of nice like that. I could do other things to this. I could change the colors. I could change the number of layers. I don't know what that does. Actually, it doesn't do very much. However, the frequency does. The frequency makes it be a little smaller pattern, maybe more like that. I could change that. So I can make any other edits to it I wish. Or you could do yours. And I'm going to need to fade this still, like I faded the other one. And this one is done. Let's watch it through.
If I was stranded on an island, and I could bring one.
Of course, it's not done though. I forgot to change the text, and you have to do that too. So we're going to go back into the generated media of the text area, and it's not Daniel Bexford. I'm going to have to rustle through my papers to be reminded. This is on your first page. This is Josh Benke. NKE, and he needs his iPhones. All caps. All right. Good enough. So I'm going to close that up. And what else? All right. The next one we're going to do is adding a slide transition. And we're just going to use the same work we did before. So I'm going to select this guy and copy it and move it down to our next guy right here and paste it in here. And yes, I want to create a new one. And I'm going to do the same thing for this. Copy and go down here and paste. Okay. You see, by clicking in the track where I want it to go, it goes there. But if it didn't go where you want it to, you can just move it where you want. And as usual, we would like lower thirds information to show up a few seconds after the person comes on the screen. So that position is good. And let me right away, so I don't forget, make the edit here. This is Aaron, right? Yeah. Oops. A-A-R-O-N Richards. And he stands awkwardly. Yes, he does. Okay, good. And our fades are there still and so on, and this would work fine on its own, but we're going to do something else here now. Okay, we want to add a transition to make the text slide in and out. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to go to transitions, and I'm going to go look at slides. And you could use different ones, of course. I'm going to slide in from the left to the right. What do I do with this thing now? I'm just going to go and drag and drop it on the initial fade. And I could edit it, but there's not much reason to. And I'm going to slide out from the left to the right. Same direction, going the other way, right? Good. I'm going to drag and drop that on there. Again, I could edit it, but there's not much reason to. And I'm just going to use my, see here what happens, and that's fine. It slides. If I wanted to, I could open the color up a little bit more, maybe. You know, I could put my cursor where I want it, just like a fraction, a few frames earlier, so the color formed before. And you see why we don't put the slide on the fade for the color. Now the color would arrive, and then the slide would happen. So the slide would happen while the color was all there. That's probably a little better. All right, what else can we do? Well, we could animate this, and this is actually not in your instructions, so we're going to be on the assignment a little bit, and we could add a little sound to it. Okay, so what do I mean by animate? We're going to animate the color. Here we are. If I open up the frequency, for instance, or the offsets, let's do the offsets. And I see that all of these items, in fact, everything in here, has a little clock next to it. The clock is an animation button, and what it does is it changes, it makes the change happen over time, and it makes keyframes. So I'm going to change the progress in offset. So I'm going to click on this little animate button. Okay, so I'm going to set the progress at the beginning is as it is here, and you see a keyframe has been created. Then I'm going to move my cursor up to the end, and I'm going to take the progress and move it up like this. And watch the screen as I change this. It changes the offset and it progresses it through its paces essentially. And you'll see another keyframe was created, and it's showing me how the progress is changing in a steady line, and that is fine. So we animated the offset of the patterns in the noise texture by creating a keyframe at the end. So we go from initial state to an ending state. What does that look like now? Let's go ahead and use it and go through it.
Doing great. Woo!
So there's a little swirly, sorry, a little swirliness in that pattern now, which probably, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. First of all, we don't want our lower thirds to be distracting. We want to be able to read the name easily and then have them go away, because what's really going on is what people are saying, right? So if you feel like it's distracting in your final video, in your final project, maybe you wouldn't do that. But maybe you want to go even further. Maybe you want to add a sound. These little trigger sounds are used to match events that are happening. And this time we're making a little trigger sound to match the slide that happens. So I'm going to go back to my project media bin and remember, sorry, there we are, project media. Remember this little zap sound? Well, I'll make some more space here so we can see the audio portion of the timeline better. I'm going to go drag this zap sound down here. I want it to be, put my cursor there so I can know where I am. Right when the slide is happening, it started and it's progressing a little bit. And then the same kind of place on the slide on the other end. I'm going to copy that sound, copy it, and go down here to about there and paste. And actually, whoops, I don't want that up here. What's that doing here? Ooh, and I've got updates. Oh my goodness. Let's move it back a little bit. The sound back a little bit. Come on, sound. Move back. There it goes. Okay, what is going to happen is we're going to hear a sound when that slide happens. And let me bring it up and go through it now.
Doing great. Woo!
Okay, so maybe that sound was a little loud. Of course, I could reduce the volume of it easily by I would want to zoom in probably a lot actually with this like this. And I would take my little gain button here and yank it down a little bit. The same with this one here. And I could work more on this, but that's certainly fine. Okay, so now you've got 3 different ways of doing lower thirds, making your own in Movie Studio. So go ahead and save your work and make sure you do your render correctly, and make sure, please, always check what you made afterwards, that you really got what you wanted before you load it up to Moodle. By the way, that little piece of sound, some people will call that a stinger. These little audio cues that go along with other things. There's other names for them in the audio world too, also. Now, frankly, you may say, hey, why do I have to do all that work? Aren't there some special effect lower thirds that I could just get in a video package that some video programs already have? Yes, but I think there's some value to learning how to make your own custom one. And yes, in the future, if you move on to Adobe Premiere and After Effects and so on, you can make extremely complicated special effects ones. But you know, the point is they're just supposed to be communicating and not supposed to be getting in the way. So I think a simple, with a little bit of color, lower thirds is probably not a bad idea. Of course, once you got one established for your production, like your final project, you would just, as I've done here, just copy and paste it down the timeline. You'd always use the same color and the same font sizes and so on, and then you would just, that would be a uniform thing. Maybe you'd use a special version of it, bigger and different, though, for your title or something. Okay, I hope that works out for you. Ask questions as you're doing this if you have problems.